Welcome. Today we have Kara Daniels. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
So, Kara is an interspecies communicator channel for nature and nature spirits and land healer and teacher. So, I am so excited. The reason why I have you here is because my heart was just drawn to it on some of my plant medicine journeys. I have been communicating with trees and have some experiences where I'm hearing their stories and I'm hearing their music is different than the music I hear under the stream or under the ocean. The trees have different music. So I was so fascinated when I heard a little of your story, and I just want to hear it all.
Of course, but first, I just want to say it is so cool that you're connecting in with the trees. That just makes my heart sing, literally, with the music of the trees. So, to give you a little bit of my background, I am like your traditional nature nerd, nature kid. I grew up barefoot, wandering around. I lived in an urban environment, but I was always barefoot. I was always playing with the caterpillars and making mud pies. And so, nature was always just part of my
This
life.
is how children's lives should be, I believe. Just locked inside, only on
Yep.
electronics. I don't hate electronics. My kids play them. I homeschooled for 8 years, and we would get our work done, do all the stuff, and then we'd have lunch or take a picnic, go outside, and we'd hike or we'd be in nature in the trees for the whole afternoon. And it was the most amazing time. I like want to cry right now because it was such a special time with my boys. They're 19
Oh,
and 17 now, and they got to play with sticks. They got to play in water. They would make these little flower crowns and put them on me while I was nursing my
oh,
baby. And we'd read books together in nature, and they made up these little like games. It was just the most amazing, incredible time. And even homeschooling, I see parents now who are just stressed out and like, they got to be up to grade level and I need to do school like the school does it. And it's like, you know what these kids need? They need to be in touch with nature. They need to
mhm.
feel, I can't even express it all, but it's so, so important. And thanks for letting me cry and rant about it.
Oh, it's all good. I got a little teary-eyed too because I felt that so deeply. I mean, that's a whole topic we could totally dive into.
Right.
I myself, I feel very lucky to have had that opportunity because I feel like I was kind of like that last generation that got to kind of free range. And so
Yeah.
for me, nature was always very ingrained within my body, my essence. It was just, I was passionate about it. In addition to that, my parents were teachers and adventurers. So we would go hiking and backpacking. I think I went on my first wilderness backpacking trip when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. And so for me, truly, I felt at home in the forest, in the woods, around wildlife. And I would always go back home to the urban environment and just be like, ah, blah.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just that's how I navigated my whole life. That was the inspiration for all of my decisions. I always thought I was going to be a wildlife biologist or an activist of some kind. And so that was the trajectory that I placed myself on. And then I hit a wall after 10 years trying to kind of make myself fit into that space. It just wasn't happening. I didn't fit in very well with the biologists. I thought all of the decisions were too political, and that's another topic for another day, but I
Right.
had to take a step back and just say, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Because number one, I'm so passionate and I don't know what to do with that. And two, I feel like I have this big mission and I also don't know what that is. So I just got really upset one day and I just kind of threw my hands up and said, okay, universe, what the heck? What am I supposed to be doing? Why do I feel like this? I feel like I'm supposed to be going somewhere, doing something important. I just don't know what it is. And then that's kind of when everything exciting started to happen. I had a stray
That
cat.
feels like the big like catalyst in the plot line, or the big, like
Yeah.
everybody that's doing something great always has this time where they're just like, this is not working. What the world tells me I need to do is not working. And there's something bigger. And I give up, universe, God, whatever people want to call it, take
Yeah,
over? I love it.
exactly. Ooh, I got all the chills with that.
Yeah.
But that was exactly what happened for me. As soon as I kind of just gave up trying to make it work and kind of went into that surrender and acceptance mode, I had a stray cat come into my life and she started communicating with me. She introduced me to animal communication. Now, I've always been spiritual. I've had a few people in my life that would talk to me about, oh, I see auras or I see dead people, or, so spirituality was always part of my life. I just didn't think I could do it. And then this
Mhm.
cat starts to talk to me. I go down this huge rabbit hole of learning how to communicate with animals. I open up a business to be a professional animal communicator, specifically for domestic animals to help their guardians connect in. Well, after about a year of working in that professional field, my heart felt really sad. And I realized that one day I had a few client calls and I was just looking out my window thinking, this isn't quite right. I'm really loving my job and the path that I was led to. I didn't really choose it, but there was so much missing. Going back to my childhood, right? That passion of the wild, I could feel it calling me. And I literally could feel the trees calling me and the forest calling me. And it's like, when can I carve out some time? I need to go to the forest and I need to figure out what this is because I feel like I entered into this space, but there was more coming. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I actually asked some of the animals in spirit that I have on my guide team now, what am I supposed to be doing? How can I go forward? And one of my horses specifically, he was my main guide at that time. He said, go find yourself a tree, take yourself into the forest and find yourself a tree guide. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. And
I
then
love this.
I know,
Tree
I
guide.
mean, I just kind of follow the breadcrumbs at this point.
Yeah.
And I had heard of people who could communicate with trees and or nature, but when you Google tree communication, you get all the scientific stuff. It's like, no, tree communication, nature communication. Like, there's not a ton of information out there. So I was kind of just going with it. I said, okay, took myself on a walk, and I said, I'm going to go on a 5 mile hike today. It's going to be great. I'm going to clear my mind. And when I got to the trailhead, I thought, oh yeah, I'm supposed to talk to a tree. So I just kind of thought, if there's a tree around, I'm available. I don't really know what I'm doing or how to do this. And so
Tree speed
started,
dating. Finding
yeah.
your tree, like there are tips on this, how to find your tree guide, how to connect with the right tree. I love it.
Right.
So that, like
I know. It's so weird. I was like, do trees communicate? I don't know. So I started walking and I was like, I'll just do my 5 mile hike, see what happens. I had my agenda. And about, I think it was only 100 yards in. And I all of a sudden was overcome by this really interesting kind of magnetic sensation. And I was like, I can feel somebody calling me. And so I'm like, okay, it's coming from my right side. And I looked over and there was
got
this
a
beautiful,
chill all
I
the way
know,
back of my head. Okay, sorry, I'm
so cool.
interrupting your cool
It's
story.
it's all good. It's so exciting for me too. So I look to my right, and just down this tiny little hill is this beautiful tree in the middle of a meadow, right next to this gorgeous creek. And I thought, yep, all right, I'll go down there later. I was like, yeah, I see you. I'll come back. Just kind of ignoring all of the messages I'm receiving. I took about
Mhm.
4 more steps, and I realized I lost my dogs. I took both of my dogs with me, and they were down there with the tree. I was like, okay, message received.
Of course they
And
were.
so I right, they were like, "Hello, mom. This is it. This is it." And so I go down there and I just sit and I'm just like, "Okay, it's a really beautiful day. It's so sunny." I took my shoes off and I got out my notebook. I always have a notebook with me because when I communicate with animals, I have a notebook to kind of help write down or scribble or whatever. And so I brought my notebook, got my notebook out, and I was like, "Now what do I do? How do I initiate a conversation with a tree?" And I was like, okay, lean back on your animal communication skills and just go through the same process. And immediately, this grandfather type energy came into me. I felt like I was getting hugged and I might weep because it was like, oh my gosh, I'm being held by a tree. He feels like my family and I
Mm.
feel like I'm home. And that was the moment where, like, I feel like, see, I'm getting all red and teary eyed. I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm home. And it was such a deep soul level understanding. And at that moment, I was like, this is just so incredible. And so we just had a conversation. He wept in his own way. He was like, I haven't had a communication or conversation with a person in so long. He's like, thank you so much for recognizing me. I call to everybody and nobody hears me. He's like, you're the first person in a very long time. And I'm just like bawling my eyes out the whole time.
Oh.
And we just had this conversation. And it was beautiful because not only could I recognize him, he could recognize me. And he said, I would be honored to be an acting guide for you. And because when we tune into nature in this capacity, they have a higher perspective. They can see parts of you that you can't see. He was just giving me some information. He's like, you are a nature person. You connected with Gaia. You're an advocate for Gaia. And he was kind of giving me breadcrumbs that didn't make sense to me until actually just recently. But he said, it doesn't matter. I am your guide. Take my cone. And he actually dropped a pine cone almost on my head. And he said, take that with you. And you
Oh,
can use it as a reminder and or a way to connect in with me.
that's
And
so
so
cool.
I know I still have his little cone here. Like I'll have to show you.
Hey,
It's trying to click.
are you writing a book?
I am in the process of writing a book. Yes, it's a
Okay.
slow process, but
Is
yes.
it your story? Are you going to tell your story or is it something else?
I am going to infuse my story into it, but really it's a how to communicate with trees yourself, kind of that step-by-step guide.
Oh
And
my
then,
gosh, I cannot wait.
yeah, I know I'm so excited. There's also going to be messages from the trees too. I mean, I'm so excited, but it's
Really
slow.
huge.
It's like
That
so,
is so big. When this
oh,
book comes out, I want to be your biggest salesperson and proponent
oh
and do
my
a book
God,
club and
thank you.
yeah. Okay,
That's so
sorry. I keep
cool.
interrupting
Like
you
it,
because I'm so excited.
that's cool. Well, it's good to know that there's interest in somebody wanting to read this book
Right?
that's
I
going
know you think about some of
to.
the things I do, and I'm just like, maybe it's just
Yeah,
me. Maybe I'm the only weirdo
yeah.
out there that likes this kind of stuff, I don't know, but luckily there's the internet, so we can find other weirdos
Yes,
like us.
exactly. We're the best kind of weirdos. I
Mhm.
love it. Yeah. So, anyways, I wrap up my conversation with this
I do
tree.
use weirdos in like an endearing, wonderful way because that's how I feel. I'm not trying
I do
to.
too.
I hoped you knew. Okay, yes, back to your
Yeah.
story. So
No.
he drops a pine cone.
Oh,
Go
that's
back to that moment.
yeah, yeah. So he drops this pine cone and just says, use this as a reminder of our conversation and hold it if you ever want to connect in with me again without actually having to come here in person. And I was like, yes. And so I've had this pine cone for years and I just love it. It's just a reminder of such wonderful connections. And I do still connect in with him pretty
Mm.
regularly. He's actually helping me write that book. So that's really cool. After that moment, I literally only hiked a mile after all of that because what I noticed next were snake skins or ran over snakes actually, which was really sad. And this is a really off the beaten track kind of trail. So I'm not really sure what happened. There was nobody else around and or no fresh tracks. But anyways, there were snake skins and snakes everywhere. And I thought, well, what is the symbolism behind a snake? And it's like obviously shedding skins, growing bigger. And I totally took that as a symbol like I'm shedding layers right now and I'm growing into something more. And it's like you got to get rid of all that icky, sticky, scaly, uncomfortable skin so you can grow, right? And that's exactly the point where I was spiritually, emotionally, like my whole world was represented in those little snake skins and those snakes. And so that kind of just led me on the path to talk more to trees and explore other beings of the land, including the mountains and stones and rivers. And so since that day, number one, I thought, why is nobody talking about this? I can't find hardly anybody out there openly saying, yeah, trees talk. You can have conversations with them. And two, like who else can we talk to? And so it just literally blew my world open. And that led me to learning about land healing and all of the other avenues that I'm kind of working with now. But that's my very long story.
Like
Me
that's got
here.
to be the short version because I have lots more questions.
Yeah, that is the
Wow.
short version for sure.
Yeah. Oh, this is so cool. So I'm curious. I have so many questions. The difference, like the energy difference and the like purpose and perspective difference from an animal to a tree to a rock to a stream. Does that
Mhm.
question make sense to you?
Kind of. Just to clarify, are you asking if they communicate the same, if there's anything different with the way they communicate, or maybe I read that wrong?
Yeah, yeah, like how they might communicate. And I mean,
Mhm.
to me, it just seems like I wonder if maybe they just don't think about it this way, but like they almost have a different purpose. But yeah, maybe just you can start with how they communicate. That's a good place because I'm not really
Sure.
sure how to phrase my question.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see if we can kind of work our way. I think I get what you're saying. So animals are kind of different, like domestic animals specifically are a little bit different to communicate with just because they are so entangled with their people. However, that being said, they still have a higher perspective. A lot of them do. Not all of them will share that, but usually that higher perspective can come through in that bigger picture. And the same goes with the trees and the stones. I mean, honestly, they do have the bigger picture in mind, and that's how they communicate, at least to me, is this is kind of what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and this is the ultimate goal that we're reaching for. And that can kind of take us into the whole bringing in a new earth, higher frequencies and things like that if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But as far as actual communications go, it's all the same. All of the animals communicate the same. All of the trees and beings of land communicate the same, like through your subtle senses, or some people call them psychic senses, which is your inner knowing, seeing, hearing, the emotional responses that you get, those physical reactions that you get. Like we keep talking about, oh, those goosebumps. Yeah, those are ways that the beings communicate with us also. So
Say someone hears this and they're like, this is so cool. I want to go talk to a tree, or I want to go communicate with my pet or whatever, little tips on how to do that, or a beginning point.
yes, absolutely. I love to just help people do this on their own. I would say if you are brand new to the world of intuition or feeling into your own inner wisdom, that's where I would start, because the way that all of these beings communicate with us is very quietly within our internal ecosystem. And so learning your intuitive senses, learning your psychic senses, which they're all the same, really. Like, how is your body communicating with you? That's kind of step one, is to
Mhm.
integrate into yourself. The second piece of advice I would say is we'll just kind of focus on trees now. If you want to go talk to a tree, there's a few ways that you can do this. If you have a favorite tree in your backyard, in your park, you can start with those. But I would caution against that. And the only reason is because if you're already visiting them every single day, if you already have some kind of relationship with them, it might be harder for you to feel into those subtle senses when they do communicate because your energy is already intermingled. Take yourself on a walk in a new location, trail, park, whatever, wherever. Go alone if it's safe to do so, or have a friend with you. I find if you have a friend with you with the same goal and intention, it's really powerful to kind of compare what's happening together. And you can say, I felt this too. Yeah, so did I. Or, to have somebody like that community, building that community. So
Yeah.
go with the intention that you want to talk to a tree and then be quiet. You have to be quiet and intentional. So instead of kind of going back to my story, instead of doing that, oh, we're going to go on a 5 mile hike, have no goal
Mm.
other than to be present, be quiet in the mind,
Mhm.
don't talk if you can, and just feel into the trees. And what I mean by feel into the trees, I mean bring your awareness into your heart center and let your heart lead the way. Because the trees, and this is what the trees tell me, is that the trees want to pick you. They want to call you in, just like the tree did when I first met mine. And they say that specifically because if there's a bunch of trees around, they're going to know that you're going to want to talk to them because you set your intention, which turns that little light on. And the trees are going to call you in through that heart center. It's a magnetic pull usually, but the trees want to pick you because they're going to try and match your frequency as best as they can. So they can communicate with you clearly and easily versus if you're just casually picking a tree, it might be an energetic a mismatch, which will make the communications harder if you're just brand new to this whole world. So let the tree pick you. You'll feel a call, you'll feel a pull, you'll feel like, why do I keep wanting to look at that tree? Like something will tell you that that's the tree. Go up to it and sit quietly with it, say hello, and just see what happens. Just be in the presence of the tree and see if you can go back to those subtle senses. Are you feeling emotional? Are you feeling tingles on one side of your body or the other? Are you seeing something within your mind's eye? Like pay attention to what's going on internally and then start building that connection with that tree. Sometimes it takes more than one visit to really build repertoire. Trees are proud and they understand humanity, can be wishy-washy. Oh, they're like, if I'm going to open up that connection, I want to make sure you're committed. So be serious about it. Find a tree that you can visit often after you find that connection. And then after you do, go back to those trees that you already dearly love and do the same thing. Just say, I want to learn how to talk to you. Can you help me? And just be quiet and go within and feel with your heart. I think that is the biggest takeaway is pay attention to what your heart says.
I love it. Do you just have things come to your mind and you write them in your notebook? Is that kind of part of your process?
That's how I started. Yes. So I consider myself a channel. I'm very clairaudient, which is my inner hearing is extremely sharp. And what I taught myself was how to automatic write. And so when I have direct conversations with the trees, I sit there and just write everything down as fast as I can. Or sometimes if I'm sitting in my office and I'm trying to tune in, I'll just type everything, which is more productive because it's faster. But
Yeah.
that's what I do when I'm channeling. Otherwise, it's more just casual conversations. Like I'll get words, I'll get emotional responses, I'll see things, and it's a lot more of the entanglement of all of the senses combined.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sometimes for me, because I feel like, especially on medicine, has helped open that up for me. And I hope to not like need to use that all the time, but I'm so grateful that it showed me this magical world that I'm learning how to tap into on my own. So it was kind of a neat piece for me, stepping stone, whatever you want to call it, tricycle wheels. What do you call those? Well, what do you call those on the bike? Anyway, but so I feel like I'm clairaudient there. And sometimes just like speaking it, because I can speak so much faster than I can write into like my voice
Mhm.
recorder on my phone helps too, so that I don't lose the information. But I've started writing a lot more too. So that's fun. Okay, thank you so much for that. And I want to ask about animals. Like, what are some of the messages? Well, from trees too, but what are some of the messages that are important? Like maybe one or two that might end up in your book or something like that. If you're willing to give us that, maybe the message from trees, and if there's kind of a common what it looks like for people and their animals when they're communicating.
I feel like the way that I communicate with animals is a little bit more big picture soul level than a lot of other animal communicators. So
Mhm.
I'll just kind of prelude with that.
Got you. It's
That's
not
kind of
like,
the
hey, I want my food right now. Like people kind of know things that are a little more basic level. It's a little larger.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think both skills are really important, but just the way that it works for me is like we just go straight to the soul level. We just skip all of that common like introductory talk, if you will. So
Yeah.
what I've been learning over the past few years, whether it's the animals in spirit or even the animals on the physical plane, is like number one, there's so much more to them than people realize. They are energy healers
Mm,
and they definitely bring in a level of higher consciousness, just like the trees do. If there's any kind of overarching message or theme that comes through, is to really use your animals or even the nature around you as a mirror, a reflection back to you of your current state of being, and how can you take what is being shown back to you and heal. Or if you don't like what you're seeing, what steps can you take to kind of change that, heal yourself, but also that the higher consciousness or a new way of living in collaboration with the animals, in collaboration with the beings of the land.
good.
This is the
Say it
only thing.
again.
Okay, it's that higher consciousness is coming to this earth where we're going to collaborate and co-create with the beings of the land. And that includes the animals in our house. It includes the wildlife in our backyard. It includes the tree beings and all these different creatures and spirits of the land that we live amongst. It's like that's kind of the overarching message is that soon more and more people are going to start waking up. And when we're moving and shifting into a new direction where we're all going to co-create and collaborate together instead of like this huge perception that we're all separate. And so that's really the big message that comes through almost every conversation I have and have had for the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so like it seems impossible, but also so like so easy to reach too. I don't know how to explain that. Like we could have that. We could have more communication with the land. We could work with the land better and the animals and the, nature, all of it and each other. Like we can be more connected to each other. So I had a special little journey with some friends recently, and it was so clear to me, like, we don't need all of this talk and all of this other stuff. Like we energetically, intuitively know what the other person needs. We know when they're feeling sad and we want to help and connect and hug them and love them. And we know when they're happy, and we know, like the animals, I just felt like this wolf pack, and I could telepathically communicate with my friends,
Wow.
and we didn't need any words. It was so instinctual and easy and simple, and words just like fogged it all up. Like
Yeah.
made it more complicated, and it was so simple. So I don't know if I'm getting off tangent of what you were saying, but that's so beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
I
room for me on plant medicine.
I completely understand what you're talking about, where it's just you just automatically know
Mhm.
what is needed. And I feel like a lot of pet parents are like that with their animals already. Just to kind of provide a little bit more insight there. A lot of people that come to me have all of these questions. And when we go through all of the questions, they're like, "Yeah, well, that was kind of what I was thinking too." I'm like, "Well, of course it was, because you are already talking to your animal. You're just second guessing yourself." It's not this verbal communication always. It's just an inner knowing and understanding of what another needs. Oh, I just really love that. And I feel like a lot of people do put too much weight in human language when there's so
Mhm.
many other types of language out there or ways to communicate.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we all know, but we don't think about it quite so in the forefront of our minds, that we also communicate. I don't know what the percentages are, body language and, that energy and that emotional, just those little things that we do pick up on others. They can say, I'm doing great. And you can catch the little quiver in the side of their mouth when they're trying to smile, or you catch all those little emotional things. We know how to love each other and how to communicate with each other without having to speak, I guess, is my message there. But that's really exciting. I love that there's more people just working
Mhm.
towards the unity and the peace and the higher consciousness of everybody. And that, I feel like it's like raising it to the consciousness of nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the animals. Like I was never around animals as a kid, so I'm a little like have to get used to dogs. But my daughter moved in with a dog that's has so much energy. He's the sweetest thing, and he has so much energy. So he has not yet learned to not jump up on people. And when you're saying mirror, it's interesting because he's different with different people in the family, whether he jumps up on you or not. So it's very interesting what he's mirroring there in that energy. And three cats, and just having that energy. They're so pure, they're so sweet, they're just like this essence of love. And yeah, what other words can I use to describe it but love, just kind of a
Like,
pure higher consciousness where that's all, the other stuff doesn't matter. I'm rambling now.
you're Oh, I just really love what you're saying. The consciousness of love.
Mhm.
Because yes, animals are, and I see them and all of nature the exact same way. They are like so pure. And then we have us humans who think we're the best and we're very complicated. But
Mhm.
the animals in all of nature too, it's like they communicate and connect in with that frequency of love. And it's like,
Mhm.
yes, I love how you said that's what we're working towards, is to reach their frequency, because
Mhm.
we are our humanness and not quite there yet. But we that is something that we're working towards. And I just really love that you said that, because a lot of people, it's interesting. I know most people know me from Instagram. That's kind of where I'm most active as a tree person. But it's interesting because a lot of people reach out to me privately and they say, "But aren't trees lower vibration? Aren't they like the devil?" And I don't want to take this in a weird space, but I get a lot of people that get really concerned that if they connect in with a tree, they're connecting in with a lower vibe entity. And I'm
Interesting.
like, Well, no, that's not exactly how it works. You know, Gaia consciousness, we live on this planet. We are nature. And it's like, how did that disconnect come, right? How did somebody demonize the very things that create our oxygen? I just think it's totally ridiculous. But I do have a lot of people that reach out to me, and it's just incredible. So I don't know. I just needed to share that, but because it's the frequency of love, that's the energy that we're working with, and the trees and the animals and all the beings of land fall under that umbrella.
Yeah, I think it's challenging for some people when we've grown up with such a strict definitions and things are this way and anything that's not, that's woo or that's crazy talk or that's the devil, right? And it's so interesting. I did a hike and it was a large group and I dinged this little golden Tibetan bowl and just had them just breathe and connect in with their body and connect in with the earth beneath them on this hike. And it was a really short one and I didn't really get into any woo stuff. It was just like, let your nervous system relax. Like that's
Mhm.
basically all. Like I didn't say much and dinged this bowl a couple times. And then we listened to nature and just connected in. And in the company, I do private hikes, but the company I work for, it was on one of those. And the people that come are very like, let me get more miles, got to burn more calories. I got to look fit. I got to get better. I got like biggest
Mhm.
loser type people energy. And I'm trying to show them
Mhm.
this, like, I only love doing the hiking. I really don't want to do all the rest of that push and stress and work and fight so hard. I've done that before, and it's not where I'm at right now. And a gal said, you're doing, that is disrespecting Christ. You just did a Buddhist prayer, and anything that is not of Christ is like of the devil kind of thing. And I'm like, interesting. I will respect you and I will not ding the bowl or ask you to breathe during the next hikes I do with you. But so fascinating how like one-minded, and she just wants to do what she's been taught is right and good and the best, right? But it's so interesting how we can kind of get stuck in a box a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's okay. There's realities for everyone. I'm not going to
Mhm.
make her change or tell her she's wrong. That's fine, it's her way. And I mean it's interesting when she's challenging other people, but and the way they want to practice, right? But yeah, so fascinating. So now, speaking of this box, I had, after my plant medicine, my first journey, I was just very open and very in touch and in tune, and I met this beautiful lady who was 93 years old, and she was very psychic, and she talked to and saw all the gnomes and the elementals and the fairies and she got my kids these cute little St. Patrick's Day, they're not gnomes. I don't remember what they were called, but anyway, and she said she infused the little doll with an essence of, whatever. And I loved it. It was so fun. So I'd take my kids out and we would look for them when we'd go out and we'd make little, fairy houses out of things. And she taught us to like, as we planted our garden, we were planting a garden that year, and she said to like just put a little bit of your DNA on the seed, and then
Mhm.
we'd plant the seed, and then we'd tuck it in, and then we'd sing to it. And my kids were like all about this. It was so fun for my two little boys, like, and it was so fun for me just living in that world. And then I decided that that was too unrealistic, and I needed to not even play like, but I was like opening up. How do I know there's not elemental beings?
Mhm.
This is great. Let's just be in this magical world with my kids and with my beautiful 93-year-old friend. And as I closed off to it, I kind of got like more serious and more, I didn't have that playful magic with me with my kids anymore. And anyway, she passed away, and I was like, you know what? Dang it. I believe in fairies, and I don't care if I sound crazy. I love it. I loved my magical world where we looked for fairies and we played in nature, and it was just more fun. Who wants to be in a boring, like, corporate work environment? I want to go play in magical nature. So anyway, tell me about the fairies and the elementals and all of that.
Yes,
If
oh,
you
of course. I mean,
Mhm.
that's, like, my favorite spot to be in that little world of magic, and it just makes me so sad that you would close yourself off to that because I totally get it,
Mhm.
especially kind of in the United States, can't see it, can't measure it, doesn't exist, right? Like, I run into that all the time. But there's almost everywhere else around the world understands that there's fairies and other beings, which I just think is so cool. It's like getting outside of that box, right? Like really
Mhm.
learning what the world has to say and share versus maybe your one little version of reality. I think that's really important, but it just breaks my heart
Yeah.
that so many people do that. And kids, especially, they just have this beautifully magical existence. And then they hit society or school, and it's like, oh, I can't be like that anymore, and that's how I was as a kid. I lived in that fantasy, quote unquote, "fantasy world." I hit mainstream school, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, I'm the weird one." Like, I'm the
Yeah.
weird one and not in a good way.
Yeah. Right.
Um, so it took me some time to kind of open back up to that too. So when you talk about that closing of that, I feel it so deeply because it's like, why do we have to close that door? When it comes to fairies and gnomes, I just adore them. And I know there's people out there that caution, like, don't work with the fairies because they're tricksters and this and that. Well, that has not been my experience. And this is where discernment really comes into play. I definitely have met beings within the unseen realm that I'm just like, I see you, I respect you, but we're not gonna interact. And that's
Mhm.
fine. You just have that discernment. I think that's really important when we open up that doorway. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I see fairies and gnomes constantly. Animals talk about fairies constantly, for better or for worse, like the cats. The fairy,
Fascinating.
yeah.
I mean, not plants, but animals. We know that, like, dogs have they can hear sounds that we can't hear. Obviously, we know that. That's fact. And is it dogs that have the different cones? We talked about it on one of my episodes, Christina Alton. The cones in their eyes are different. We know all different animals have different vision, right? Different seeing. So it's definitely possible that they're seeing and hearing things that we can't see and hear.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's actually how I got introduced to the fairy realm. I had cats and dogs just saying, "Yeah, the fairies are back," or "Mom's Pegasus guide is here." I don't know, he's kind of weird, but he comes and goes every once in a while. And I'm like, "Okay, that's cool. Didn't expect that one," but I guess, after it happens so many times, you just kind of start going with it. And then when I started to talk to the trees, they were like, "Yeah, well, the fairies live here. Don't go over there because that's the fairy space." Or I have gnomes living underneath my roots, and this is what they're doing. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I can talk to the fairies. And this was kind of when I started diving into land healing. I was really getting called to do readings with the land itself. And so I was practicing distance readings. I used my aunt for property because I helped her create this beautiful cottage garden. And
Oh,
I thought, I'm familiar with this place, but I'm not there directly. So I'll just kind of see what happens. And so I put my attention there. I guess energetically felt around, and all of a sudden this little fairy came out and she was like, "Hello." And she started talking to me. And ever since then, this was about 2 years ago, anytime I have fairy questions, I ask her, I'm like, "What do you do in the garden? Like, do you hibernate or do you stay awake during winter? What is your perspective and what is your job?" And so she'll tell me what they do, what her little family does within that garden space, which is so cool.
yeah.
And then
What
I
is their
ask,
job? What did they do?
yeah. Yeah,
I'm
so
curious.
this group specifically, I will only talk about this group specifically, but she said her little family, they take and I'm gonna try and get my wording right here, but the caretaker, my aunt of the garden, this is her special garden, so she's really the only one that goes there. And so when she goes there, it's kind of like her retreat center, so she'll go there really stressed out, and then have that stress and relax, like, that stress will leave, the relaxation will come in, kind of regulating that nervous system. Well, the fairies describe that as, yeah, when the woman comes, she basically gives us a ton of fertilizer. And that's exactly what they showed me, is like I could literally see my aunt's stress just kind of sinking into the ground. And the fairies were just saying, yeah, we collect that energy up and transmute it and use it as fertilizer in her garden. So we try to help her by like literally asking her to give us her stress and all the stuff she doesn't need or want. And then we take it and create fertilizer with it. And let me just tell you, this garden is huge. All of the plants that were supposed to grow 12 inches are like 24 plus. And it's like we overplanted it because, they were only supposed to grow so big. And these plants are just gigantic. Beautiful, beautiful. It's such a fairy garden, truly. You can feel the magic there. So that's what she was just saying. It's like, yeah, we just caretake for the garden. She described creating codes similar to light codes, if you're familiar with those. They're
Not
kind of
super.
new into my yeah, they're new into my space too, but essentially a quick definition is codes are basically symbols with a specific energy. I'm not going to describe this well. If you're curious, go Google or look up light codes. But what she was showing me was that instead of light codes, they create codes infused with their energy, the fairy energy,
Mhm.
and they use those codes to create physicality, things that are physical. And she's like, yeah, we work with the roots of the plants, we work with the different molecules, and we're creating, and she just showed me symbols that eventually become something in the physical. I'm totally botching this because I don't completely understand it,
Uh-huh.
but that's what she was sharing with me is like, yeah, we just create these energetic codes and basically create things and then put it into the world. And the way that they do that is by working with the underground system.
Okay. So I'm writing a children's book, and I want to put some of the things that you've said into my book about fairies, about
Ooh.
trees. If I do that and send you some pages and say, how do you feel about this? Am I plagiarizing you? Am I stealing too much of some things you said? Would that be okay?
I would love to read what you write, and I can help you too if you're looking for words or like, what
Mhm.
does this look like? I have, because I write this all down, I actually have the scripts, and so maybe we can just go back and forth. I'm happy to share with you and
Yeah, we'll have to
help you
do like a
co-create.
writing night, a writing group or something, because this is so, it like fits so along. I actually sat down to write my story about talking to the trees, which was actually a lot more boring than what I ended up writing, which was a fictional story that brought in those elements of what I learned about the trees. Does that make sense? But it's more
Totally.
like for a little kid or a tween or something, you know? But then it still like brings in how when she goes to this specific tree, or all the trees really, and she kind of gets infused with this magic. So let's see. I'm going to read the paragraph. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
after I described the tree and her playing in one of the trees. And I have a grandfather tree. So it was so cool when you said that, because there was a grandfather energy on this first place that I talked to trees, that they said this home had been built like 100 years ago, but the trees had been there on that land way before it. So 27 minutes had passed as she played in the tree, and her body was lighter and her vitality restored. Her aura was infused with enough magic from the tree that she could sustain her knowing for weeks. So this tree, she could no, it was hard to make decisions, but when she was near this tree, she connected her to her knowing. Okay, it always snuck up on her when the tree magic was getting low, and if she didn't go right away to the tree, she would run on empty. And the problem was, once she got to empty, she no longer had the desire or motivation to follow her heart. It was like a gray fog had settled over her, and she couldn't remember why she would ever want to do something so frivolous, so silly, and such a waste of time as climbing and playing in a tree. At this point, I'm going to have some mythical creature here, had to figure out a way to tug her and persuade her, or even trick her into accidentally sitting by the tree to do her work, so that she would come in contact with it just long enough to charge her battery a tiny bit. And then she would start to feel the tug and the knowing and the call to follow her heart. So, anyway, I'll have like little things infused there that are like, that's how I feel. Like,
Yeah.
I don't go out and I'm not in nature, and I'm just like, all right, get the chores done, do this stuff, and I kind of just start to lose that magic battery, that life force energy. And then finally I get a friend, or I get tricked into going outside, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love doing this every day. Why did I think all that other stupid boring stuff was so important? Because it's not. Anyway.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love what you have written down so far. I can't wait to read it personally. So you just let me know when it's available because I'm definitely going to buy it. So I love
So
it.
fun. Thank you. Yeah, it's fun to just what the universe brings me. Like all the podcast people when I was starting my podcast, and even like a writer that helped me write my trailer. And then now all of a sudden I'm running into the perfect people that are writing books, or you're just the perfect person. So it's so fun.
I was just thinking it's like once you open that space or that door aligned with the universe, it's like all the people come into you, like into your reality to help
Mhm.
and give you extra support. I just really love that.
Yeah. And you're like, wait, all of you people existed. So I want to let you share how you help people. And if there's anyone that's like called towards you, how they can work with you.
Um, so I always like to invite people. I hold a free monthly land healing meditation. It's the third Saturday of every month. It has been so amazing. So if you're like, what is this land healing all about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Come hang out with us there. It's really cool. We just go through meditation, do some healing, and meet some really amazing people that are all aligned. So that's something I always like to invite people to. And the way that a lot of people work with me is very specifically land healing or readings for their property. And what that looks like is like if you want to uncover the spiritual aspects of your property, power spots, what elementals are there? Do you have fairies? Do you have gnomes? Who lives alongside you and how can you connect in with them? And then, if there's any energy that needs to be healed or cleared, like trauma within the land or even within the house, I'll do some of that clearing for you. But it's a co-creative process of working with the land and home with a client to uncover the spiritual aspects of their house. And they are just mind blowing. That's just one of my favorite things to do.
Ah, I love it. We have, oh my goodness, gathering here in St. George. It is nuts. It is like there's so many, especially women, that are just stepping into their gifts and their power and their beauty and their brilliance. And it feels like a very sacred gathering and on accident. Like all these people, I don't know why I moved here, but it's amazing. I found all you people here, and several of them have land or are creating places where people can gather to heal and to work together and work with the land. So it'd be super fun to have you out here one day
Oh,
and just like, I don't know, we could plan something amazing. We'll see what the universe has in store for us.
that is so cool. You're so lucky to have a community like that. That's just right there in person. That's so cool.
It's amazing. I was thinking your community you have. You're saying just these meditations and the people that are on there, if people are drawn towards you and kind of like you were like, no one's talking about this stuff. And then they can feel at home and be able to talk
Mhm.
openly about the gifts they have or the experiences they have or what they want. And even if people are just like, I'm not sure about this, but it sounds interesting. Like for some reason, I want to come watch. I'm sure it's a safe place for people who are even just curious.
Absolutely. I really strive to create a safe community. That is something that I pride myself on. And
Mm.
so, what I found is just having that intention. Everybody that comes, they're just wonderful. It's like we just openly talk about what our experiences, what we saw within the meditation, and if we have questions, a lot of people that come are professional practitioners, and so they can share their insights too. Like I literally just create the space, and then so new people coming in, I've had a lot of new people like I wasn't really sure. I just kind of wanted to see. I didn't expect anything to happen, and then they would in front of like 50 to 100 people, they would come on and be like, I just have to share with you everything that just happened. And I'm like, you are amazing. Like, one, you're brave for just saying that. But I mean, I feel like the people do come in and they feel safe and held and heard, but also, it's an invitation to explore a space that might not be in their realm quite yet. So, yes, very
Fun.
safe.
It's
Mhm.
so fun to meet with people. And I have a lot of different friends and all of our beliefs are different. Like we don't have the exact same beliefs. We're not like all new age this or all, like it's such a wide variety. And for me, I'm just like, I'm open to all that's your experience. So like I believe you and I I respect that, right? And to come to a place where it's just like magical because we're all like opening up to our gifts and we're all just like so happy to be alive and spread love and yeah, magical. That's what this world that you live in sounds. I'm in. I'm on board. So at my friend's funeral, I actually we a few of us got to just kind of get up and say something at the gathering after, and I was like telling my story a little, and I'm like, and everyone stood up, and they're like, "Yes, you go!" It's so cute. It's so funny. But do you
Aw.
want to just end us off with, I don't know, a message if you could tell everybody who's listening, right? Something that, man, is just really important to you or what you'd like people to know or take from this. Boil it down to one last little message. That's kind of a lot of
Yes.
pressure. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's all good. I know exactly what I wanna say. I would just like to leave people to be inspired to find that inner child, that inner curiosity, that playfulness, and that magical face that many of us experienced when we were little. And now, as adults, we have to kind of find our way back to that. So, laugh more, open up your heart, and reconnect with that inner child.
I love it. So beautiful. Thank you so much for being here and just sharing yourself. Like it takes courage to just step outside the norm and share your experience. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Such a wonderful conversation. I really appreciated it.